Hello, M0CRT here, and I'm going to go through a setup for you of the SoftRock SI570 Homebrew HF SDR transceiver. This particular transceiver, designed and built by Dean Bryce, G0UIL, who was the winner of the Pat Hawker G3 VA RSGB contest in 2018. Hopefully this video will give you some good idea of how to set the device up and how to configure it and use it with a simple application like WSJT-X or JTDX or any other type of digital sending receiving type application. Major components, as you see in front of you, we have the transceiver on the left hand side here with audio out, audio in and a USB interface. You can find these marked on the back of the transceiver with a blue and a green marked for audio in out, and also a USB for the USB cable. Now the USB connects directly to the computer. It is going to configure itself and be controlled by PowerSDR. The audio out and audio in is going to again go to the computer, and it's going to go through either a USB sound card or a sound card that you may have connected within the computer. Now in my case I've opted for an external sound card, a USB sound card, something like an Asus U5, as you can see in front of you. That works particularly well. It does have a high sampling rate, and that's something that you should be taking into account when deciding on whether to use an external USB sound card with the device or use your internal. Certainly the internal sound card within any modern computer will be particularly suitable. It has what's called a 96 kHz sampling rate, and that would be perfectly acceptable for an SDR. However, the higher sampling rate, the more bandwidth, inverted commas, that you'll see on the screen. So try and avoid any of the cheap and cheerful £5 USB external cards that you can get on Amazon or eBay, and certainly opt for using your internal sound card or something high-end and dedicated externally. So that's the sound card component, and obviously that interface is with PowerSDR, and we'll go through the PowerSDR components a little bit later on. PowerSDR also has interfaces inside the computer with other packages, with other programs, in order to communicate any CAT controls or changing of frequencies, etc., virtually within the computer to other radio applications. We don't generally use PowerSDR directly with that. We use an application called DDUtil v3, which I'm highlighting for you there, and that's used by that's connected via a virtual COM port. You can see here the vspMgr, and I'll show you how to set that up. Very straightforward, and what that then allows is a virtual COM port. In the good old days we'd have a physical COM port with a cable between two computers, say for instance. Here we're using a virtual COM port, which is basically a COM port but inside the computer. So both applications think that they're running on an external COM port somewhere else. They're not. They're actually inside the computer, and that then simplifies things connectivity wise. The other side of things for PowerSDR, obviously the audio, once things have been processed and sent to other internal applications. You see here at the bottom here we've got an audio in and out via what's called a virtual audio cable. I suppose it's very similar to the virtual COM port. We create a virtual audio cable using a piece of software, and again we can pipe the audio in and out of PowerSDR to other applications, in this case WSJT-X or Digital Master or any other digital mode or communication or analytical tool that you may want to put onto the computer. The way that in this circumstance WSJT-X can change frequency and keep CAT controls with PowerSDR and ultimately the transceiver is via an interface here that DDUtil provides. In essence, DDUtil pretends to be Ham Radio Deluxe, and in that case WSJT-X, when you select Ham Radio Deluxe, it will go, oh great, smashing, there's Ham Radio Deluxe there, so that's who I'll talk to. And in essence it's not, it's talking to DDUtil, and DDUtil in turn through this virtual serial port communicates to PowerSDR CAT interface here and onward to the transceiver, and obviously can have CAT controls and change the frequency. Great stuff. So that looks good. So the order of events today with the install files, we're going to go through installing a virtual audio cable. We're going to install the USB drivers for the SoftRock itself, otherwise it won't work. The PowerSDR setup, the virtual serial port manager program, DDUtil, which I explained earlier, was that little tool to assist with CAT controls and another interfacing with PowerSDR, and the JTDX FT8 software in this case. So let's get started. Virtual audio cable first. So I will include the links to these various applications. Virtual audio cable, I would suggest you look at purchasing the product. You can find links on the web, or there are other products available that act in a very similar manner. So I'm running Windows 10 64-bit here, so I'm just going to run the 64-bit setup. This should be all straightforward. I accept. And we're just going to run that, and this is going to install a 4-cable virtual audio setup, and that's done. Very straightforward. We're now going to install the SoftRock SI570 USB driver. If we have a look in devices, device manager here, I haven't got the SDR switched on at the moment, and I will do. And I'll press the button here, and we'll see something appear. It should all set itself up. But the one thing you will see at the moment is that we have a problem here that it's reporting as a DG8 SAQ-I2C. That's perfectly normal, but obviously what we're going to need to do here is we're going to need to install the driver. So I'm going to double click on the driver, and hopefully once we've accomplished this, we accept all the standard offerings. And fancy that, it's now installed, and we should see here a SoftRock 40 SI570 control P0FKO, and that's good. So that looks to be working as it should do. We go back to the install files, and now we're going to install PowerSDR. So we go to PowerSDR and we run the PowerSDR application. Now there is a separate DLL here in here. This is SDR1K USB DLL. Obviously I'll go through that in a second. That does need to be copied to your installation directory, but let's go through the SDR setup, accepting the defaults, and this should just take about 30 seconds to a minute to run through and process. So in the meantime, all the folders should be created. So I'm going to pick up this SDR1K USB DLL. This is the interfacing DLL, as it were, between PowerSDR and that driver that we installed a few moments ago. So let's go and find the folder. Now if I hunt it down, we should be in here somewhere. Flex Radio Systems. Here we go. So PowerSDR is completed, and we're going to take the DLL and we're going to copy it into the folder. I already had it in there, but there we go. So it's in Program Files, Flex Radio Systems, PowerSDR 2.8. So that should be PowerSDR complete and ready to start up. However, before we do that, let's just install the other two major components here, which are the virtual serial port and DDUtil. Go through the virtual serial port setup. Now you will be able to pick a copy of this up from, if you search for it vspM. I believe I do have links in the description, but if you do a search, you'll be able to contact the gentleman concerned who offers this application. He offers it free to radio amateurs, which is very jolly nice, and he will send you a copy of the link so you can install that. As you can see, we have an icon on the left now, vspMgr. This will just take a few moments to finish off. So once this completes, we'll then install the DDUtil application, and we'll then have all the components installed and ready to configure. And I'll then step through that with you. So we might be able to start the DDUtil application setup now. Here we go. Again, selecting the defaults. I'll have a shortcut icon for that, which is good, and click finish. So obviously virtual serial port's just getting its life in order. That's now finished. So we have the first 5 components installed, and now we're just going to do a little bit of setup before running PowerSDR. Now, if you recall from the diagram, we have the virtual serial port manager here. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm just going to create a virtual serial port connection, or a cable as it were, a virtual cable with references to COM11 and COM12, as you can see here. Now I can use any COM port that's free on the computer. By default, maybe some of the more older devices, computers that you have out there, will still have a physical COM port on. More these days you'll find that devices very rarely now come with COM ports. So you do need to just check in BIOS to make sure that it's enabled, disabled COM port. You'll also be able to find within your device manager whether you have any COM ports. And at the moment, as we can see here, I have no COM ports at all set up, so that's fine. So I could use COM1 and COM2, I could use COM3 and COM7, I could use COM30 and COM32. There are limitations depending on the application you use, generally up to maybe COM port 32, but you don't have to go mad with this. All you need is 2 COM ports that you can reference, and it's easy to use 2 sequentially numbered COM ports. So in this case, to keep away from anything low down that may install automatically as part of other hardware that I may install in the computer, in this case I've kept COM11 and COM12. So let's open up vspR Manager and set those COM ports up. Now it does, VSP Manager does get a little bit of angry at times with a few errors, but I wouldn't worry too much. It does all work. So we're going to set the one end to COM11 and one end to COM12, as you can see here now. And I'll create the pair. I believe it'll come up with an angry message, as it usually does. Again, don't worry about that. Just click continue and push on through. If I click refresh on there, I can now see COM ports 11 and 12. And even more so, I've now seen my device manager, I've now got 2 COM ports. One COM11 to COM12 and one COM12 to COM11, which looks great. So that's VSP Manager set up. I'll open DDUtil. I haven't even gone into PowerSDR yet. Going to DDUtil. This application at times, certainly on Windows 10, can look a bit strange. In this case it's saying it's wanting to upgrade itself. Certainly for this version of PowerSDR and the radio you're using with SoftRock, I would avoid doing those upgrades. In my own experience, that's only just caused problems. So generally leave it as it is. We will open setup though, open setup form. And in here there are 1,001 options. It looks absolutely overwhelming. Do not worry. There are 2 specific settings we need to tweak in here, and then we're done. We're out of here. I mean, there are plenty of other things that you can have a look at and fiddle around with, as you can see. A lot of these are specifically related to add-ons with PowerSDR or the Flex radio systems. So yeah, a lot here will not be relevant to the SI570 SoftRock. What we do need to set, however, is we need to set a COM port for DDUtil, and if you recall in our diagram we set DDUtil here to have COM port 12. Well, that's good, because on our setup we have in features legacy COM port 12, so that's good, that's set correctly. The other option that we are going to need to set here, it's all on the features page, we don't have to go anywhere else, is we're going to enable here HRD apps. HRD standing for Ham Radio Deluxe. This in essence is going to emulate Ham Radio Deluxe, so that when any other application wishes to talk CAT and wants to talk to the transceiver through PowerSDR, we can select Ham Radio Deluxe in the interface options, and lo and behold, it will talk to DDUtil and hopefully just work. In this case, we then don't need to have any weird, wonderful setups on any other application we're using, and by and large, as we're probably all aware, the applications for digital apps or anything else within the amateur radio space generally is Ham Radio Deluxe, is always available, certainly on an interface, so that's good. So 6.2 enabled, the default port is 7809, which is a TCP port. Not to worry about any of that, we don't need to remember that, but we do need to be able to say make sure we select COM port 12 and make sure we select HRD apps to enable. Close that down, we can minimize that. So now we should be ready to load up PowerSDR, which we will do here. Now initially when you get to this point, if you haven't run PowerSDR before, would you believe it, I've actually tested this before I did the video, fancy that. You'll find that there will be no radio interfaces other than demo set. So if you're wishing to interface it with the SoftRock, you will need to add SDR 1000. So you can add a legacy radio app and you select SoftRock. Let's have a go with that, shall we? Let's make sure it all works as it should. So I'm going to select SoftRock, and in fact I'm going to select SDR 1000. Now I'm digging. Hopefully this will work, won't it? SDR 1000. Let's just roll that one back and just make sure that I'm not telling you porkies. You'd think to select SoftRock, select SDR 1000. Okay, remember that? Select SDR 1000, and we're going to click Use. And it's going to go through setups. Now at this point here it says, oh, I found the USB connection. We just leave it as it is and it will crack on and go on through. It'll do that a few times and then it should load, which it has. Marvelous. Let's just take a moment to have a look at some of the initial setup with PowerSDR. It does look like a very complicated application. There's a lot of things in here, but I just want to touch on some initial setup points rather than attempt to go through everything that you see here. Otherwise, a 30-40 minute video could easily end up being a 3 to 4 hour video. So we select Setup, and certainly one that we know that we are getting connection to the USB adapter and ultimately the transceiver is that the USB adapter box here is ticked. This must be ticked, otherwise it won't. It must be checked. If it's not, you won't get a connection to the transceiver. So if I was to take that out of there and click OK, and then I attempted to start the radio, well, that doesn't look right, doesn't it? That looks particularly weird, and that is exactly what we've got there, something very particularly weird. So we will come out of there. And this is just to really show you how not to do things. Give it a few seconds to close completely. If you click on PowerSDR too quickly after closing it, it will say there's already an instance there and it will get angry. So just give it a few seconds if you're wanting to restart it. SDR 1000 set and click Use. Now this time when it loads, because we have the USB box unticked, you'll think, oh, it's loaded, great, everything's fine. No. Let's go back into Setup, and the USB adapter is unticked. Not good. That will not work. Tick that. There we go. It says, oh, I found everything again. It's all good. Now, if that doesn't work and it comes up with an error message at that point, you need to go back and you need to check whether you have copied over the DLL here, the SDR1K USB.dll to the folder, the installation folder for PowerSDR. 2, have you actually made sure you've installed the P0FKO USB driver? 3, have you checked that it's actually in the device manager properly and you can actually see the device in here, the SI570? And 4, although I'd never teach anybody to suck eggs, have you actually got it switched on? Okay, there we go. If you haven't got it switched on, it actually won't appear in device manager, but it's always best to check. So I've got USB adapter selected there, click apply OK. Let's just see whether everything is working, and we'll be able to check that very simply by clicking start. And yes, sort of. That's better than it was before. And in fact we can see the bandwidth here from 14040 to 14085 or thereabouts. And it looks like we may have some signals and some other things coming through. At the moment I'm tuned to 14074, which is at the FT8 frequency on 20 meters, and it actually looks like I've got some signals here, which should drop off every 15 to 20 seconds as we know. In fact, look at that, there we go. So I think that looks to be working reasonably well. But one thing we do want to check now is, have we got the audio set up properly, because the audio interface is in and out of the radio when it comes to here, and also when it comes to here when we get on to talk about WSJT-X or JTDX or any other add-on piece of software. Have we actually got that configured correctly? Well, first of all, let's just check in our device manager. Certainly in terms of the audio controls, the audio devices, my apologies, let's just see if everything's in there correct. So pull that down, depending on how many USB sound cards you have plugged in and all the other good things, you can see we've got what we'd broadly expect. I can see the Asus USB sound card that I have connected. I've also got some internal speakers and microphones from the onboard sound card within the computer, and I've also got an external USB headset that I'm using for the narration here. So you may see quite a number of things in here. Now if I'm going to do the job properly regarding the bandwidth and the sampling rate correctly, what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to check in the control panel and in sound. And this is going to bring up a panel here showing all my inputs and outputs. So we're going to be using the USB Asus device. So let's have a look first of all at recording. Now what I do want to ensure when we're actually sending audio from the SDR transceiver into the computer, that we are using line input, not microphone, line input. So ensure that you do have line set as default. Now on many sound cards you'll find a line and a microphone option on the unit, or when you plug a cable in it may ask you, do you wish it to be configured as a line or a microphone. In the case of the Asus U5 USB device, it actually has an output that can be switched between mic or line. Now line is going to give you a stereo input whereby the microphone is not. Other sound cards may differ, but what we do need to consider is we do need to send from the SDR both channels, the left and the right. If we don't do that, we don't get the I and the Q parts of the signal from the SDR, and it will cause you no end of frustration. You'll be seeing things on the screen, you'll be thinking you're receiving, and you'll be blaming the antenna, Dean, me, the man in the moon. Don't. Basically you do need to check these settings out to make sure it's correct. So what we'll do is we'll have a look at line. We'll make sure it's set as default device. We'll have made sure we've checked our cabling as well, and I'm just going to right click on here and have a look at properties. I'm going to have a look at the levels. Now here I'm going to bring the level down to about 20 from 50. And I'm also going to have a look in the advanced setting, and this is the crucial bit here. Now I'm going to change this to 96. Now you may want to change it to 192. I find 96 works well to start with for me, but you can experiment with these, but certainly set it to more than 48 kilohertz if you can. So I'm going to select 96 kilohertz here, or 96,000 hertz. See what I did there, and click apply. So I now know that the actual sound card is configured to send from the external USB sound card to the computer now at 96 kilohertz sampling rate. That's good. I'm also going to check on the playback, the output as it were, so when I'm transmitting. I'm going to have a look again at the ASUS U5. I'm going to go properties. Levels I'm going to bring down to 50 for the moment, and the advanced I'm going to switch to 96 and click apply. So they're the two settings within the sound card settings of the device manager, as it were, control panel. I'm now going to check in PowerSDR. I'm going to go back to setup here. I'm now going to go into the audio settings. Now then, this is really crucial, and if you get this wrong, you will not have success, and things will be very upsetting at your end. Driver wise, I'm going to select a low latency driver. Now here you may have one or more of these options. I'm going to leave it at MME. Again, you can experiment with other options, but the MME driver is a relatively low latency latency option. In other words, it sends the audio from the USB and inside the computer at a very quick rate, very low latency, very little delay, as it were, is what we're getting at there. So I'm going to have a look at the input and the output. So the input here, I'm going to select my input from the ASUS U5. Now you'll see here I don't actually have the line input. I have microphone but not line. Or did I? No, I have it right there. I lied. So the line, see how sometimes you can make a mistake here. So I'm going to look at the input, I'm going to select the line, and the output I'm going to look for my ASUS. So many things in here, you've got to be careful with all the virtual cables. I'm going to select the U5 speakers. Mixer, I'm going to select none, and crucially I'm going to now select my sampling rate, and I'm going to now select or leave it at 96,000 there, 96 kilohertz. Leave that set at 96. The line in and the mic gain you can adjust. This is all about getting the levels correct. Certainly further videos required on this, but you can leave those default for now. And click apply and click OK. I'm going to start that. And now we can see we get a full spectrum right across. And that's actually looking pretty good at the moment. We're on 14074, and I've also got signals here which I should be able to, I can move around a little bit, I should be able to zoom in there a bit more, and those are looking like FT8 signals, and that seems to be working quite well. So good. I think what's happening here certainly is I'm getting a transmission through. Everything looks to be fine within the SDR itself. I can quickly click on MOX. I can hear, or I should be able to hear, a little click in the relay on the SDR as it kicks into transmit. Of course, don't do that without a dummy load or an antenna selected. I'm going to go back into setup now. I'm going to have a look at a number of options I have in here, and certainly one of the things I'll want to do is try and set the level or the sound floor, the audio floor for the actual setup here. So I can do that. There are a number of settings. There's a calibration here. I'm going to be looking at frequency calibration. It would be useful just to click start and run that through. That'll run through a calibration, which it's doing now. And the second thing that you'll be wanting to do is, with the antenna unplugged, so you'll need to unplug the antenna for this, is the level calibration. And I usually set something in the region of 110 to 130 here for the level, and click start. Again, make sure you do this with the radio unplugged, the SDR unplugged from the antenna, so it's all quiet. And you click start, and it should go off and do its thing. and you'll find that you'll get hopefully a reasonable level set, so your signal meter will start to make some sense. Once that's done, let's have a look at the virtual audio cable. So what we've been through here, we've got the SDR set, we've got the audio coming into PowerSDR, we've got the COM port here set. Now let's have a look at the VAC. In fact, one thing that we didn't have set, just check that off, is the CAT interface on the PowerSDR. So in order to do that, we go back into the setup here. And lo and behold, I wonder where this could be. Could it be in CAT control? It sounds about right. So we go into CAT control. We have CAT control set here, and we have a port configured. So make sure that you have a COM port set. In this case, I'll be setting it to COM11 and checking the enable CAT. And click OK. Let's have a look at the virtual audio cable next. So this is going to allow the audio that's coming in through the transceiver through here to go all the way through to where we want it to go, which is WSJT-X. So let's open up the setup files again and go into audio, and this time let's go into VAC1. VAC1 is showing as enabled. Virtual audio cable is switched on. Again, I'm going to go with an MME, and this time I'm going to select one of the virtual audio cables here. Now, a virtual audio cable can be used one way or the other. It's not two-way. So think of the fact that if I want to have an input and an output with using virtual audio cables, I'm going to need two of them. If I was wanting just to send it one way, to say just do receive, I would only need one. So if I was only wanting to receive signals with WSJT-X, I'd only use one. However, in this case, I'm going to use two. So I'm going to use line 3 and line 4 rather than line 1 or line 2. Let's try that. So the output here I'm going to set to line 3, and the input I'm going to set to line 4. Now when it comes to the other application, making sure I set that 48 kilohertz is perfectly reasonable for that. Leave that as is. You don't need to start stepping up the sample rate there. This is only internal inside the computer. So we can leave that. We can enable digital mode, change. Everything else in there is good. I do find on my setup, by the way, that I need to just turn down the RX here again. Otherwise, you'll see that my signal generally gets a little bit overloaded in WSJT-X. So again, a little bit of experimentation required here. But input line 4, output line 3. So if I'm outputting from the virtual audio cable system here on line 3, my input, if I'm coming out of VAC on line 3, my audio in on here will be line 3. So I'm looking for, when I open WSJT-X or any other application, I'm going to be looking for line 3 audio cable. And for out, I'm going to be using line 4, and that's going to go into line 4 on VAC. I hope that makes sense. Once it clicks, it will click. But it does seem to be quite strange initially to get your head around things that are virtual like this. So 4 and 3, click apply, click OK, and that should now be set. Certainly if at the moment I'm in USB, I can switch myself into DDU, which goes to digital USB, and this then allows me to control the VAC settings here on the RX gain without having to go into settings, which is really quite useful. Also, I can see that VAC1 is enabled here. I've clicked on that, so that's now enabled, so I know that the audio is streaming through. So let's have an install of, in my case, JTDX, and let's see how that looks. See if we can get any audio connections through. By the way, while that's doing its thing, I just wanted to show you the virtual serial port here. We've got that open still. If I click refresh, very useful and very good for debugging here, is you can see that next to the COM port, it will actually show you the application that's using it. So this is very handy to see whether you're actually getting a connection to the COM port properly. Go through here with all the defaults, accept everything. And we'll run this up. It's coming up with angry messages. I'm sure that's all okay. Looks to be. Now then, let's have a look at the initial settings for JTDX. You'll see at the moment it looks particularly angry on the spectrum analyzer type thing at the top, on the waterfall. Let's have a look in settings. You may or may not be aware, call sign setup in here, your Maidenhead grid square. Let's have a look at radio. Fancy that, I have ham radio deluxe set. That's correct. I obviously want ham radio deluxe set in there. It will automatically connect locally to my to the ham radio deluxe settings on DDUtil on here, ham radio deluxe apps. And we'll also be using cat to key the radio. Again, simplifies things very, very easily. Settings there, we can test the cat. Looks alright, cat's tested. Sometimes it does get a little bit wonky. Let's reopen that, make sure it looks alright. It's all going a bit wonky. There we go. Let's open that up. Obviously, if you're getting things like an error regarding stale lock files, don't worry too much. We can click no, or we can reset things. That does look to be better though now, I think. Certainly, I just want to check that the cat's working properly here. We've got 14074. If I select drop down box and select 7074, as you can see, 7074, switch it back to 14, goes back to 14. So that looks like cat's working correctly via the DDUtil, albeit with a few little angry messages to start with. But the crucial thing is to make sure that within settings you have the ham radio deluxe set. If you are struggling with this and you're getting a lot of failure messages and errors, shut everything down, start the DDUtil up again, and then run JTDX or whatever other piece of software you're using. Okay, quickly let's have a look at the audio. The audio is not set correct because as it's showing there, it's showing line 2 and line 1. Let's refresh ourselves on what we had actually set. We'd set the output on PowerSDR here as line 3. So we need to select the input on JTDX to line 3. And we've got the input to PowerSDR on line 4. So the output of JTDX will be line 4. Everything else as is. Click OK. Let's just see what happens here, and instantly we've now seem to be getting some signals coming through. We've also got on the right hand side here, it's showing a monitor wise of the dB level of the input signal from VAC. You can see how I can check, and in fact I'm getting signals as well. I'm getting messages, but you can see exactly what happens here if I switch the VAC control off, or the interface off on PowerSDR. You'll see instantly, you can see it drop off on the actual JTDX software, and if I switch that back on, that comes back up. Obviously useful because I'm running, let's just move this around a bit so we can see this a little better. Obviously here I can now control the gain, and if I pull the gain down, you see that the signal goes down, and if I pull the gain back up to where it was before, 0, you can see how that's very high, and that's why I brought that down. So again, bring that down to around -30, and it's dropped down again. I'm using DigU there, digital mode upper sideband. All digital modes on a HF operate in USB, apart from frequency shift keying, I do believe. I'm sure somebody will shoot me in the comments if I am wrong. So that looks to be operating okay. If I can check, obviously in settings here, I can go into reporting. I've got switched on to enable PSK reporting spotting. That's good. I'm getting all sorts of near Europe, anything on 20 meters at the moment. So that's looking good. That's the initial setup of setting your Flex Radio PowerSDR application with the SoftRock Dean Bryce G0UIL HF transceiver. More videos to come soon, including a Linux video. But I hope that's helpful. If there is any questions or things I've missed, I'll be very happy to clarify them in the questions and answers. And if there's some burning questions that you wish to have answered, I'll be very happy to help with that too. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.